The air in Cleveland felt different the night SHEDEUR Sanders stepped onto an NFL field for the first time. For weeks leading up to Brown's preseason opener, the noise had been deafening. Pundits calling him overhyped, skeptics insisting he was just a product of his last name, and rival fans mocking the idea that a fifth-round pick could seriously compete for QB1. And yet, by the end of 4 quarters, those same voices were quieter. Not silent, maybe, but quieter in a way that told you they'd just seen something they didn't expect. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. It wasn't the perfect Hollywood debut. Sanders didn't come out guns blazing with 70-yard bombs or flashy scrambles. In fact, his first series looked cautious, almost too controlled. Quick check downs, safe throws, making sure he wasn't the one to make the first mistake. But in hindsight, that patience was the first hint of what was to come. He wasn't there to win over the crowd with hero plays. He was there to win over the locker room, the coaching staff, and the skeptics with consistency. That moment came early in the second quarter, after a defensive turnover gifted the Browns a short field. It was one of those situations that can expose a rookie when the defense is getting for a quick 3-and-out, and you've got maybe 30 yards to work with. Sanders didn't blink. On second down, he read the defense pre-snap, saw the safety creeping down, and adjusted. The ball snapped, he hit his back foot, and fired a strike to Caden Davis on a quick slant, perfectly placed between the corner and safety. Touchdown. No wasted motion, no panic, just execution. That first score was more than points on the board. It was proof that the kid could process the game at NFL speed. The very next drive was a real turning point. This time, there was no short field. He had to work the length of it. On the second play, he dropped back, saw his receiver get a step down the sideline, and launched a 30-yard rainbow that landed exactly where it needed to, in stride, away from defender, and in bounds. It was a kind of throw that makes defensive coordinators groan, and quarterbacks, coaches nod quietly to themselves. A few plays later, Sanders capped the drive with another touchdown, showing the same calm, surgical approach he'd displayed earlier. By then, the crowd had gone from polite applause to genuine buzz. People were leaning forward in their seats, wondering if they were watching the start of something. The stats by halftime were impressive. 2 touchdown drives, high completion percentage, 0 turnovers. But the numbers didn't tell the whole story. What stood out was how unflappable he was. Pressure in the pocket, step up, reset, deliver. Coverage tight downfield, take the check down and live for the next play. Blitz coming, slide the protection, get the ball out fast. There were no reckless throws into double coverage, no panic scrambles at lost yards. And the body language? That might have been his biggest win of the night. In the huddle, he stood tall, made eye contact with every guy, and delivered calls with a confidence that belied his rookie status. On the sideline, he was in constant communication with receivers and linemen, going over routes and protections. Between drives, he stood next to the quarterback coach, studying tablet footage like a starter preparing for the next possession, not a kid just happy to be there. It's one thing for fans to be impressed. It's another when veterans start taking notice. By the end of the game, guys like Amari Cooper and Myles Garrett were talking openly about how calm he'd looked under pressure. Garrett even told a local reporter, "You can tell when a quarterback is in control, and he was in control tonight." That kind of endorsement carries weight in an NFL locker room. Even more telling, the sideline energy. After each scoring drive, players were greeting him with high fives, helmet taps, and grins you just don't fake. Football is a game of trust, and in one night, Sanders had started earning it from the guys whose respect matters most. Of course, the performance didn't just stay in Cleveland. Social media lit up almost immediately. Clips of his 30-yard strike circulated with captions like QB1 and the real deal. Deion Sanders, never shy about supporting his kids, posted a proud message that went viral within minutes. LeBron James added his own shout-out, turning the night into a full-on cultural moment. And that's the thing, SHEDEUR Sanders isn't just a football player right now. He's a lightning rod for conversation, a mix of sports and culture, that pulls in people who might not even normally watch a Browns preseason game. That's exactly why his critics have been so loud. He represents something bigger than just his draft slot, which is why this debut mattered so much. If he'd gone out there and looked overwhelmed, misreads, bad turnovers, sloppy mechanics, that just a name narrative would have been locked in for months. Instead, he forced the conversation to change. Suddenly, the focus wasn't on who his dad is or what round he was drafted in. It was on how he just outplayed expectations and maybe a few competitors on the depth chart. The Browns clearly saw enough to want a second look. Post-game, Stefanski kept his praise measured. Poise, preparation, execution, he said, but it was obvious in the way the staff talked that Sanders had earned himself more meaningful reps. That alone is a big deal in the NFL. Rookies, especially late-round picks, usually have to claw for every snap. Sanders had just played himself into more opportunities, and that says more than any soundbite could. What really made the night special, though, was how composed Sanders stayed afterward. In the locker room, he wasn't gloating or soaking in attention. He was at his stall, cleats off, still going over plays with teammates. When the media came around, his answers were short, focused, and all about the team. It's about execution. We executed tonight. That's it, he said. No chest thumping, no, I told you so. That's how you keep the momentum going. Not by proving people wrong with your words, but by doing it with your game. For the haters, there's not much left to cling to after a night like that. Sure, it's just preseason. Sure, defenses aren't throwing their full arsenal at him. But the fundamentals he showed, accuracy, decision-making, composure, translate no matter the setting. Those are the traits coaches look for when deciding who they can trust under center in a real game. And now, Sanders has put himself firmly in that conversation. The next preseason game will be another test, especially with defenses adjusting to his tape. But the hardest part, the leap from hype to proof, has already been made. He's shown he can stand in the pocket against NFL pressure, deliver under the lights, and lead drives that end in points. That's not luck. That's preparation meeting opportunity. Whether he starts week 1 or not, Sanders has already changed the dynamic in Cleveland. The quarterback room feels different now. The fan base feels different. Even the media coverage has shifted from can he to when will he? And maybe that's the real victory from this debut. Not the touchdowns or the completion percentage, but the way he's forced everyone to take him seriously. For a fifth-round rookie with a famous last name and a mountain of doubters, that's about as strong a first impression as you can make. The critics might keep talking, but after this game, they can't say much that sticks. Because SHEDEUR Sanders didn't just survive his first NFL moment. The days after SHEDEUR Sanders' preseason debut didn't feel like the usual lull between exhibition games. It felt like Cleveland had been given a jolt, like the city had seen something that had been missing for years, a quarterback who could handle the moment, not just survive it. Sports radio hosts were still dissecting every throw, not just the touchdowns, but the way he managed the pocket, the patience on his checkdowns, the split-second decisions on blitz pickups. And it wasn't just the media talking. Barbershops, office break rooms, and even random grocery store conversations had shifted to the same question. Is this kid for real? Inside the Browns facility, the atmosphere was buzzing but more pragmatic. The coaches weren't declaring him the savior of the franchise. They knew one strong preseason game didn't guarantee anything. But there was a noticeable shift in how he was being treated. The film sessions were no longer purely about teaching him the ropes. They were collaborative. The coaches were listening when Sanders offered feedback, asking him what he was seeing on the field, testing his football IQ in real time. He passed those tests easily. In one midweek meeting, the quarterback's coach played back a red zone snap from his debut, pausing just as the defense rotated coverage. "What did you see here?" he asked. Sanders didn't hesitate. Nickel creeping inside. Safety shading over top. Slant windows open if I snap it quick. Otherwise, I check down. That kind of instant recall isn't common for rookies, and it wasn't lost on the staff. The players noticed too. Sanders wasn't trying to be one of the guys by forcing himself into conversations. He just naturally became someone teammates gravitated toward. During warm-ups, receivers jogged over to get extra reps with him. In the weight room, linemen made room for him at their table. Even the defensive veterans, who are usually slow to warm up the rookies, started engaging him between drills. But as much as the locker room dynamic was shifting in his favor, there was still Dylan Gabriel. The veteran wasn't sulking or checking out. He was competing hard. In practice, he was sharp, making decisive throws and showing his command of the offense. But there was an edge to it now, a sense that every snap mattered because Sanders had made the gap between them a lot smaller. The Browns' coaching staff knew this was a delicate situation. You can't outright hand a job to a rookie after one preseason game without risking locker room friction. So they made a point to split first-team reps almost evenly that week. Gabriel got his turn to the starters, but Sanders' reps felt different, more fluid, more energized. One sequence in practice summed it up. On back-to-back plays, Sanders read the defense perfectly. First, he identified a disguised corner blitz and hit his slot receiver on a hot route before the rusher got home. Then, on the next snap, he sold a play action so while the linebackers froze, opening up a 20-yard throw over the middle to Amari Cooper. The defense grumbled. The offense hooped. Coaches exchanged looks. It wasn't a competition of who could run the offense. It was starting to feel like a competition of who could elevate it. And then came the second preseason game. This time, the plan was to rotate quarterbacks more quickly. Gabriel started, moving the ball well enough but stalling in the red zone. Sanders came in midway through the first quarter and immediately put together a drive that ended in points. A perfectly timed crossing route to David Njoku, followed by a quick strike touchdown on a slant to Cedric Tillman. What stood out was how he handled adversity on the next series. A holding penalty pushed the offense into 2nd and long. Then a pass rusher broke free, forcing Sanders to step up and take a hit as he released the ball. The throw, off balance, still hit his receiver in stride for 15 yards, setting up a manageable 3rd down. They converted, kept the drive alive, and finished with another score. By halftime, the crowd's chants had shifted. It wasn't just "Let's go Browns" anymore, it was "SHEDEUR, SHEDEUR." Gabriel played the second half and was fine, accurate, steady, and turnover-free, but fine was no longer enough. The comparison was unavoidable. Sanders had taken the same offensive unit and made it hum. The next morning, the conversation in Cleveland wasn't about whether Sanders should be QB1. It was about when. Some fans wanted him starting week 1. Others wanted him to sit and learn for a few more games. But both sides agreed the job was his eventually. Inside the facility, Stefanski kept the messaging tight. It's still a competition. But behind closed doors, the tone was different. Coaches were openly discussing how to transition the offense if they made Sanders the starter sooner rather than later. They talked about simplifying some protections early on, tailoring the playbook to his strengths, and building around the quick-release timing routes he was excelling at. The real turning point came during a joint practice with another team before the final preseason game. These practices are as close to real regular season intensity as you get in August. Sanders took most of the first-team reps that day and was in complete control. Against a live defense that wasn't his own, he threaded throws into tight coverage, checked out of bad plays, and managed the clock during a 2-minute drill like a seasoned veteran. On one series, he led the offense 75 yards in just under 2 minutes, capping it with a sideline strike to Cooper for a touchdown with 8 seconds left. The opposing defensive coordinator, an NFL lifer, was overheard telling one of his assistants, "That kid's got it." When the final preseason game arrived, the Browns didn't announce who would start until warm-ups. Gabriel took the first series, which ended in a punt. Sanders came in next and never looked back. He completed 9 straight passes at one point, leading 2 touchdown drives before halftime. His final stat line for preseason: 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a completion percentage north of 70%. After the game, reporters asked Stefanski about the Week 1 starter. The coach sidestepped, saying they'd review the tape. But everyone in that locker room knew the decision had already been made. Gabriel handled it with grace, telling the media he'd support SHEDEUR and be ready if called on. Sanders, when asked about the possibility of starting, gave the same measured answer he'd been giving all month. "I just try to prepare the right way. Whatever the coaches decide, I'll be ready." 2 days later, the announcement was official. SHEDEUR Sanders would start Week 1. The fan reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Ticket sales spiked again. Team stores couldn't keep his jerseys in stock. National sports shows dedicated entire segments to debating how ready he was for the job. And through it all, Sanders kept the same even keel. No chest thumping, no victory laps, just more film, more reps, more preparation. In the locker room, his leadership was already paying off. He'd started organizing extra throwing sessions after practice, inviting not just the starting receivers, but also backups and practice squad guys. His reasoning was simple. You never know who's going to be in the huddle with you. That kind of inclusiveness doesn't just build chemistry. It builds loyalty. The regular season opener was circled on everyone's calendar, but Sanders wasn't talking about it like a debut. He was talking about it like business. It's another game, he told reporters, just with a little more noise. And when he finally jogged out of the tunnel that Sunday, with 70,000 fans roaring and cameras flashing, it was clear the moment wasn't too big for him. The huddle was calm. The cadence was sharp. The throws, just like in preseason, were on time and on target. By the end of the first quarter, he'd already led a touchdown drive. By halftime, he had the Browns leading. And by the time the clock hit 0, the chants from August were back, echoing through the stadium. SHEDEUR, SHEDEUR. The skeptics had gotten their answer, not in words, but in plays, in drives, in wins. And that answer was clear. He wasn't just a famous last name, and he wasn't just preseason hype. He was QB1, and he'd earned every snap. By the Monday after SHEDEUR Sanders' first regular season win, the city of Cleveland felt like it had collectively woken up from a decade-long quarterback nightmare. 4 years, Browns fans have been conditioned to brace for disappointment. A promising start here, a hyped-up offseason there, and then reality setting in somewhere around Week 3. But now, the tone had changed. Talk radio was alive with callers describing Sanders' poise in the pocket, the way he threaded passes between defenders like he'd been doing for years, and, most importantly, the calm, measured way he handled himself when the Panthers sent extra pressure. It wasn't just that he played well. It was that he looked unshakable while doing it. Inside the Browns facility, the post-game film review confirmed what everyone suspected. On one crucial 3rd and 8 in the second quarter, Sanders recognized a disguised zone blitz pre-snap, slid to protection to buy himself just enough time, and delivered a dart to Amari Cooper over the middle for the first down. It was a kind of read that rookies often miss, but Sanders had seen it before it happened. In the meeting room, the offensive coordinator rewound the play 3 times, pointing at the screen. "That's a veteran decision," he said. The room nodded. Even the defense had bought in. Myles Garrett, never one to give empty praise, pulled Sanders aside in the locker room after the game. "You keep playing like that," Garrett said, "and we're going to take care of the rest." Coming from one of the most respected players in the league, that meant more than any headline or analyst's compliment. But Sanders wasn't letting the moment go to his head. If anything, the win seemed to make him hungrier. By Tuesday, he was back in the film room, already studying the Browns' next opponent. He stayed after practice to work on deep ball timing with Cedric Tillman, and he spent an extra 20 minutes with the offensive line reviewing silent counts for hostile road environments. That extra attention to detail was starting to ripple through the team. Receivers were sticking around after practice more often. Linemen were watching extra pass protection cut-ups. Even special teams players found themselves in the weight room a little longer, feeding off the energy that Sanders brought to the building. Dylan Gabriel, now firmly the backup, had taken on the role of mentor without resentment. During practice, he'd stand next to Sanders between series, pointing out coverage tendencies or reminding him of certain play adjustments. It was a dynamic the coaches loved, competition that had turned into collaboration. The media, of course, wasn't about to let things settle quietly. Every national show wanted a piece of Sanders. Was he the real deal? Could he handle the grind of a full NFL season? Was he the most marketable rookie quarterback since his father burst onto the sports scene decades earlier? Sanders handled the questions like he handled the pocket. Calm, deliberate, never flustered. "I'm not here to win interviews," he said at one midweek presser. "I'm here to win games." Week 2 was on the road, and that meant a new kind of test. Hostile crowd, unfamiliar turf, and a defense that had already made it clear they were planning to blitz him heavily. From the first drive, the noise was deafening. The opposing fans banged on the railings, trying to rattle the rookie. But Sanders didn't blink. On the first play, he hit a quick out to Cooper for 7 yards. On the next, a play-action fake froze the linebackers long enough for him to drop a pass over the middle to David Njoku. And then came the play that quieted the stadium. A perfectly placed 35-yard sideline throw to Tillman, dropped right over the corner's shoulder. It was a kind of throw you can't defend, only admire. But the game wasn't without adversity. In the second quarter, a miscommunication on the offensive line allowed an untouched rusher to blast Sanders from a blind side. The hit jarred the ball loose, and the defense recovered. The crowd roared, sensing a momentum shift. Here's where you learn the most about a quarterback. Plenty of rookies crumble after a big turnover on the road. Sanders? He came right back on the next drive, leading a methodical 10-play march that ended with a touchdown strike to Njoku in the back of the end zone. It wasn't about erasing the mistake. It was about refusing to let it define the game. By halftime, the Browns were up by 4. In the locker room, Sanders wasn't pacing or firing up speeches. He was calmly talking through adjustments with his receivers and checking blitz packages with the O-line coach. That composure bled into the second half, where he led another pair of scoring drives and kept the opposing pass rush guessing with quick releases and smart audibles. The Browns left with their second straight win, and Sanders left with something even more valuable: credibility in a road environment. Back in Cleveland, the reaction was almost surreal. The fan base, long known for its cautious optimism, was starting to really believe, that they'd found their guy. Sanders' jerseys were everywhere. Downtown restaurants were naming sandwiches after him. And at practice, fans lined the fences too deep just to watch him throw in warm-ups. Inside the locker room, the shift was complete. Sanders was no longer the rookie who might be something. He was the leader of the offense. Players looked to him in the huddle, trusted his calls, and followed his tempo. Even Gabriel admitted to reporters, he's earned it. Every rep, every game, he's showing why he's QB1. Week 3 brought another challenge, this time against a top-tier defense with a reputation for confusing quarterbacks. They disguised coverages, shifted fronts late, and sent blitzes from every angle. Early in the game, Sanders took a couple of sacks as he adjusted to the speed. But then, mid-second quarter, something clicked. He started recognizing the rotations before they happened. He began using hard counts to draw defenders into revealing their intentions. And on a crucial third, and 10 late and a half, he stood in against a free rusher and delivered a laser to Cooper for a first down. The drive ended in a touchdown, and the sideline met him with helmet slaps and shouts of approval. The Browns won again, moving to 3-0, and suddenly the league was taking notice. Not just of the Browns, but of the rookie who was making it all happen without the typical roller coaster of first-year mistakes. By now, the conversations on national shows had changed completely. Early in the season, they'd been filled with caution and pump-the-brakes talk. Now they were debating how far Sanders could take this team. Playoffs? Rookie of the Year? Sanders didn't feed into any of it. His answer stayed the same, one game at a time, one play at a time. But behind the scenes, his preparation was only intensifying. During film study, he wasn't just looking at the next opponent's defense. He would study his own tendencies, looking for patterns defenses might exploit. He worked with the running backs on pass protection, making sure they were in sync on blitz pickups. He asked the coaching staff for more empty set looks, trusting his ability to read defenses and get the ball out quickly. The trust between Sanders and Stefanski was becoming one of the team's biggest strengths. Stefanski wasn't afraid to put the ball in the rookie's hands in key moments, and Sanders wasn't afraid to take responsibility when a play didn't work. By the quarter mark of the season, the Browns were undefeated, and the conversation around the league had shifted entirely. SHEDEUR Sanders wasn't just proving he belonged. He was proving he could lead. And the haters who'd been so loud in August, they were either quiet or they were wearing his jersey. Cleveland had its quarterback. And this time, it didn't feel like a fluke. It felt like the start of something real.